I think a lot of developers have been hoping to get to the point of certainty where they can plan and deliver their projects. Unfortunately, we're not really seeing that at the time. We're still expecting a lot of changes over the next 6 and 12 and 18 months. I think there's an assumption with some DNOs that a large number of the Gate 2 offers will be accepted and will progress towards connection. We see through our due diligence that a significant number of those projects will fall away over time.
We're really well placed to support now right through the project delivery process, right from sort of upfront feasibility through to submitting planning and feed, and then actually getting things connected and making sure things are compliant. So we've got a big team now, and we don't just have grid consultants. We've got lots of power systems studies engineers, and we've got designers as well. And then we've got quite a few of us that have gone through big projects and getting them connected right from the start. So yes, we're starting to help more now on actually getting the project through these various different stages. So, once we've done the kind of grid connection, feasibility and review and all of that negotiation, then, the next steps might be, doing some initial design, substation layouts and elevations, cable routing as well, making sure there's actually, a path to connect. And then it might be, doing some more detailed independent design or actually getting an ICP on board and looking at the pros and cons of different kind of ways of procurement and procuring that. And again, as we've worked with the ICPs all the time, we've got lots of really, really good relationships. So it's quite easy for us to do that. And then just as we go forward, we can review design, we can make sure things are happening at the right time, and we can also think about things like, when's the best time to do studies, like harmonic studies, and starting to look at, which OEMs would be best to use for inverters to mitigate some of the compliance risks.
Yeah. Are there any kind of particular studies that you think are important to take a look at early on in a project's life cycle?
So, obviously we do load flow and fault level studies just to size the kit. And we can also make sure that at that point we're doing something, I wouldn't say optimal, but getting the sort of best solution at that point. Looking at, pros and cons of availability and redundancy and different voltages and all those kinds of things. So they're the basic studies. But then, P28 just to check whether you might need some kind of mitigating equipment like pre-insertion resistor. And then harmonics is the big one. So where at the moment we're seeing that projects maybe before wouldn't have needed a filter. But now in, most cases at transmission, it seems like a filter is being needed especially. So I think harmonics is a big one, and that's where it's causing, there's a lot of issues. Getting the right harmonics data at the right time is a problem. So often the end of detailed harmonics data doesn't come out till a lot later on, but some kind of initial look. So for example, if you've got a long cable, you're quite likely to need a harmonic filter because you've got, amplification of resonance. So yeah, that's the area where we're seeing a lot of issues at the moment. Yeah.
Could I just add, it's not only just if you have a long cable, it's also just based on what else is connecting at the substation, right? So you can have a short cable, you can still have issues. If you don't flag all these issues early, then you get to 1 year before the date and you've got a design and you've got optimized with hardly any space, and you're, oh my god, we've got to add all this additional equipment, and last minute you're scrambling. To get things done. So
absolutely. And we're also seeing some clients actually procuring parts of the filter beforehand, kind of just in case, because the filter can have a massive impact on the connection time frame, and not connecting on time has a massive impact on the overall project revenue.
One of the other key technical risks that we've identified through our due diligence of Gate 2 offers recently is insufficient fault level. We've seen quite frequently that the original G99s that were prepared perhaps on some occasions didn't really focus too much on the technical detail, and that's now causing a lot of issues. Going back to the DNO post Gate 2 offer with insufficient fault level headroom, it can be a really challenging thing to address, particularly if there's fault level constraints on the network. I think it's just another reason why getting into project delivery early on is important to identify risks like that and start to have the conversations with the DNOs and with the TOs how to address issues like insufficient fault level headroom. And thinking about solutions like the choice of inverters or resistors, as you mentioned earlier on.
So on the fault level side, so we had a really interesting one recently on the compliance side where the fault level was low, and it was really, really difficult to get it to be compliant. So we did loads and loads of studies like tweaking the inverter controls and stuff. So, but it was really critical because it was already late connecting, so the client was losing like a lot of money. And we ended up putting 2 of the multi-core computers on it just to be able to run through loads and loads of simulations. So it was quite kind of stressful for everyone, but it just showed like the issue where like that low fault level was flagged late and the amount of problems it caused at compliance.
And if you identify these issues early on, often in our experience, there's ways to mitigate it, there's ways to solve a problem. But you just really don't want to be in a situation where you identify that late on in the process and you have to go cap in hand to the DNO to ask for additional fault level.
And also getting the inverter models as early as possible, making sure the inverter models work. And also for co-located stuff, we're seeing a lot of issues as well. So, you know, if you've got battery and solar together, for example, and they are different inverters, then we often have to develop a black box model that can then go to National Grid that can, where we can kind of, you know, coordinate the different types of inverters. But, you know, making those design decisions up front and having a plan and then making sure that those inverter models are correct is critical, because we see loads of issues with the inverters and we go backwards and forwards to the OEMs a lot. We also see issues with things like harmonic data where the data is not consistent. It might even not be consistent for the same inverter, but for a different project where we've requested it. So we can kind of flag that early and make sure that's mitigated before we do the studies.
I mean, one of the other, I guess, key milestones associated with project delivery is the appointment of an ICP, right? A lot of these Gate 2 offers have extremely ambitious connection timescales in 2026 this year, 2027, even 2028. A lot of these projects aren't in contract with EPCs and ICPs. It's obviously something that we're supporting our clients on. How have you found that process?
So obviously we know lots of ICPs because we work with them. So, you know, we know with the ones that are better for different types of projects or different voltages or different sizes of projects. Some of it's about which ICPs have got capacity at the time. But I think we can definitely contribute quite a bit in terms of which to select in the first instance to get the kind of initial quote and the initial, you know, are you interested and do you have track record in this area, for example. And the other thing that's critical is to understand what they're actually quoting for. So, you know, 3 different ICPs will give 3 different prices for the same job, which is often just about different assumptions. Have the right things been included? What assumptions have been made on the civils and the ground conditions? And because we've got a really good design team, we can help identify all that. And obviously we're now, you know, partnered with HNMV, who are really strong in delivering at the high voltages and will definitely, you know, deliver really well. But that might not be appropriate, or, you know, for the smaller kind of 33 kV projects.
And that point that you made around ICPs quoting on different things, you know, you're not necessarily always comparing apples with oranges. I think that's one of the reasons why we recommend doing a certain amount of
or apples with apples.
Apples with apples, yeah.
Apples with oranges.
It's one of the reasons why we recommend a certain amount of technical work prior to going out for tender and appointing an EPC, right? So there's things that we can help with, some of those early stage studies that we talked about, and early stage design work can really inform the technical requirements. For example, identify if there's a need for a harmonic filter. So those things are included within the scope that goes out to tender, and we make sure that there's no nasty surprises on costs further down the line. On kind of critical activities that are perhaps excluded from the scope of the proposal that's received from the EPC.
I think it's informing it. That's one very important thing, but it's also kind of helping the ICP get off the ground running. So we've do some of the groundwork, right? Especially when they're time constrained, when developers are time constrained, that we can come in and we can kind of help do those studies so that we do progress before the developer has to commit with an ICP. They're still making progress. So that's.
And I think there's different ways of contracting as well. So you might get an ICP to do some of the initial design up front, like the cable routes and the cable surveys, and kind of check all the cable route size, but not be tied into that ICP for the entire contract. They might have an advantage in
more flexibility
stages, but make sure there's flexibility in the procurement.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of occasions there's not really any choice. A lot of EPCs and ICPs are extremely busy. There's a huge amount of demand on them, particularly for projects that are looking to connect in the next few years. And they're looking for ready-to-build projects in a lot of cases. So if you can do some of the early-stage design work and studies and really build up thought through technical specifications, it takes a lot of that work away from the IPC, the EPC. You become less reliant upon them, and they can do what they're best at, which is the detailed design and constructing the project.
Yeah. And the other thing to think about as well for developers, I think, and there's a lot more of now, is developers taking out the study scope separately. So then obviously there is another interface, but that can be managed really well by someone like us. We can manage the interface between the studies and the ICP. And it means you're not going through a middleman for all the studies. And we've seen quite a lot of issues with that. I mean, the ICP will almost certainly mark up the studies anyway. But other than that, the ICP doesn't generally have the technical ability to do any of the negotiation with the network operators, for example, you have to do to get compliance. So there's kind of not a lot of point in them having the study scope. A lot of the time they don't want the study scope anyway. They're quite happy for it to be taken out. So I think that gives more flexibility, and probably, it definitely does contribute to, improving timescales.
Yeah, and managing the compliance process itself, right? So obviously we do the full sets of grid code compliance studies, G99 compliance studies, but actually managing the compliance process with the DNOs and with NISO is something that we're doing more and more of. Yeah,
we can do that as a separate service. And obviously, because we've got so much track record and experience in actually delivering the studies, then, we're really well placed to manage them and have those discussions,
Yeah, we're getting really good feedback from developers on this, right? They're generally really pleased with how this is going, like us actually managing the compliance process and kind of directly contracting out to us, so that they're more and more these days doing it, right? Because it clearly works with it.
Well, we're very customer focused, and we like projects to be connected on time. We're really driven to make sure that we're doing a good job, and we do everything that we can to make sure that we're quick at doing things. So if we are doing studies ourselves, everything's automated and we can run things really quickly. But we also have, consultants that can work, extra hours, can work at the weekends. We can work across the time zones. So, I think we are giving a really good service, like you say.
So we're starting to see a lot of Gate 2 offers come out now. A lot of these projects have really challenging connection timescales, connecting this year, next year, the year after. So we're starting to see that thinking about the steps associated with project delivery is more and more important. Anna, do you have any thoughts on the importance of good project delivery?
On the kind of general regulatory landscape perspective, obviously there's all the reforms coming in, and it's a lot to get your head around. So REMA's coming in, so they're reforming a lot of the way TNOS is going to work, for example. And then we've also got Clean Power 2030 coming in, which is reforming where you're going to potentially be connecting on the network, how the LIFO stack position is going to work. And it's reforming, actually, do you even have a connection in the first place? And the risks associated with your connection, with your kind of position moving.
It is really complicated, actually. And it's interesting as we expand into different countries, because I think we are probably one of the most complicated, if not the most complicated country. So I think as we move into Germany and the Netherlands and Texas and so on, we'll be able to bring a lot of the thinking and analysis that we've done in the UK to those countries.
Definitely. And I mean, in the UK as well, it's an ever-changing picture, right, as well. I think a lot of developers have been hoping to get to the point of certainty where they can plan and deliver their projects. Unfortunately, we're not really seeing that at the time. We're still expecting a lot of changes over the next 6 and 12 and 18 months. I think there's an assumption with some DNOs that a large number of the Gate 2 offers will be accepted and will progress towards connection. And we see through our due diligence that a significant number of those projects will fall away over time. And that will have knock-on impacts on projects that are connecting, whether it be the share reinforcement costs or the curtailment that they will see as their ever-changing position in the LIFO stack. So one of the things that we've been doing a lot of is helping our clients preempt and take account of the possible changes that may occur over the next 6 to 12 months so that they can prepare for them well.
Yeah, and obviously the types of projects that are connecting are changing. So, we saw lots of battery and then lots of battery and solar co-located, and then obviously we're seeing lots of data centres now. So it'll just be interesting to see how all that develops over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole topic in itself, data centres and data centre demand reform, right, is going to have a huge impact again on everyone within the industry. We've seen, in the hundreds of gigawatts of data centres apply in the last 12 to 18 months. Yeah. And I mean,
and obviously the demand for them is absolutely massive.
There's just not enough resource to get things delivered now. So previously, if you missed your milestones, fine, the DNO will just accommodate you, and that's fine. But now they don't have the resource to accommodate you, and a lot of projects are just being massively delayed because of constraints. And we're trying to move towards Clean Power 2030, and unfortunately, the result of the reforms that there's just more uncertainty, of course, and we're really struggling to build everything out, and that just adds more risks on, especially the near-term projects, but also the future projects, because who knows what's going to happen in 10 years.
That emphasizes the need to have a really close relationship with the DNO or with the TO and through the process, and having regular meetings about the delivery of your project. They've got a huge challenge over the next few years. They've got to connect so many more projects than what they've ever done with a relatively inexperienced workforce as well. They've experienced a lot of attrition and retirement of people within the DNOs with 30, 40 years of experience. So it's a huge challenge that they have. And that's one of the areas that we can help with, right? Constantly engaging with the DNO to make sure that your project is being prioritized and the risk of delay to your project is minimized over the competition.
And I think that kind of theme of lack of resource on the network operator side was really evident in the demand reform, kind of the CFI and the request for information, or how have they worded it. Half of the document was asking whether people could do user self-build. Would they want to do user self-build, and do they have the capability? Do they think it's good? So clearly they're realizing now that they really have a big problem, and it's going to be maybe not up to developers, but more in the developers' hands to kind of take control of their own projects. So it's going to keep becoming more complex.
On the other hand, I mean, obviously the DNOs and the TAs have got a massive challenge, and I think there have been some really positive steps, especially around data being made available, and some of the new tools that we've seen coming out of the DNOs, and the engagement we've had through the curtailment process as well has been really positive, hasn't it? So I think it's not all a doom and gloom, but I think a lot of good stuff is happening as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on the topic of curtailment, it's obviously something that we've supported our clients with a huge amount over the last few years. It's changing again, right? The rules around the LIFO stack are changing as a result of the Clean Power 2030 process. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how we're helping clients navigate through that challenge?
Yeah, certainly. So I think as of a few months ago, at least what we heard from the DNOs is that the LIFO stack would remain as it was previously. The distribution queue would remain as it was previously, with the exception that your position could improve if projects in front of you happen to drop away and get gate 1. That was the working assumption that everyone in the grid was working to. Some people kind of preempted what's happened now, because it was initially discussed before being kind of it was discussed before they kind of squashed it. So they discussed the risk of the LIFO stack changing. It was squashed, and then everyone and we were working with the assumption that LIFO stack stayed the same. However, I think maybe around a month ago, 2 months ago, the DNOs got together, and they're basically generally in agreement that the DNOs are going to copy the NISO connections reform methodology, which is basically where projects are reordered based on their planning status, and also based on their counter signature date, which means that if you are, especially a phase 2, non-protected, non-consented project, there is a very real and large risk that you are leapfrogged, which means you can lose your point of connection. So previously you used an existing bay. Now, your neighbor who leapfrogged you, they're using that existing bay. You now have to pay for an extension, or worse, you have to be completely moved. And then it has implications for curtailment as well, because you get moved down in the LIFO stack. And previously, you're like, great, we've got 1%, 0%, low curtailment number. All of a sudden, you're looking at 10% potentially with these changes. So it's going to have a really big impact on some of these, especially further term projects, but also near term technical limits, which are often phase 2, non-protected. So yeah, it's going to have a big impact, and developers are going to have to think about it quite carefully, think about these risks, and that's somewhere where we could definitely help. We've supported a lot recently on understanding those risks and doing these curtailment estimates for clients.
And I mean, we built our curtailment tools deliberately to be able to kind of explore those uncertainties, right? So, for example, one of the things that we offer is probabilistic modeling, Monte Carlo analysis, where we can assess the impact of thousands of different iterations of the LIFO stack to really give developers and investors a full picture of how the curtailment could work out as the LIFO stack shifts over time, projects fall out the queue, or as you said, you're overtaken by phase 1 projects of your phase 2 projects. So that's something that we can really help our clients understand and de-risk early on, to help them identify whether that change in the policy is going to have a detrimental impact on the investment case for their projects.
And we've had good interaction, haven't we, with the DNOs on a lot of these projects, and data-wise, like UKPN, I think we've had really good engagement.
Yeah, I think UKPN's been exceptional, but also a lot of the other DNOs are stepping up as well.
So generally DNOs are really quite good in terms of trying to get these curtailment studies right, aren't they? They're quite supportive of us doing the work independently on behalf of developers, and we have the really good relationships with them.
Yeah, for sure. Most of the DNOs, we just reach out, and there's a few very, very good contacts we have, and also the dedicated emails are also often very good.
That's really good. And Northern Power Grid have done a great job recently on one of our innovation projects, and giving us a lot of data, a lot of input, which is really great actually. So yeah.
We're finding that collaboration like really improving over time, right, with the DNOs, and like absolutely on curtailment analysis. Like over time, I think the DNOs are really recognized how important that is to a developer and to the investors that back those projects. So we've seen access to the critical data needed to do these curtailment studies really, really improve, and that collaboration getting much, much better.
And developers recognize that it's really important for us to have those really strong relationships as well, which we do, which is great.